Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on preparing your BEAD application with BABA in mind. My name is Joe Henson, and I'm the Senior Sales Manager here at Widelity. Excited to partner with Kevin Seike, VP of Broadband Solutions at Millennium, to bring you this session.
Yeah,
So
thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
absolutely, absolutely. Today, just to let you know what we'll be talking about, we'll be diving into the intricacies of the Build America, Buy America Act, or BABA, and how it affects your broadband equity, access, and deployment, or BEAD application. So our goal here is to ensure that you walk away with a clear understanding of these requirements and how to successfully incorporate them into your BEAD application. All right, so first we'll talk a little bit about supply chain compliance. So when it comes to BEAD supply chain compliance, there's really two main components you need to focus on. First is BABA, which deals with domestic manufacturing requirements, and supply chain risk management plan, or SCRM, which is a critical element of cybersecurity. BABA ensures that key materials used in infrastructure projects are produced in the U.S., while the SCRM plan is designed to protect your supply chain for potential security threats. Together, these play a vital role in ensuring your BEAD application meets federal requirements. So next, we'll talk about the BABA program, or Build America, Buy America. Just to dive a little bit deeper into the requirements, so as you know, BEAD has explicitly listed BABA as a key compliance factor. This means that iron and steel products must be entirely produced in the U.S., and at least 55% of the manufacturing components must be sourced domestically as well. These requirements stem from the BABA Act, which was enacted as part of the IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act in 2021. And the goal here is to prioritize domestic production for federally funded infrastructure projects, basically ensuring that American industries benefit from these investments.
Yeah, Joe, and it's interesting because, obviously being in this industry, we think a lot about, how it affects the telecom broadband industry, and we spend a lot of time talking about the different materials, but, having friends that own manufacturing companies in the US, one of the things that they share with me with the BABA Act is that this was something that they were starting to ask for, going to the feds and actually asking the feds to step in because the shipping costs were getting so astronomical that it was becoming cost prohibitive, and they were asking the feds to step in and help out not just our industry but several other industries, and really starting to become more of a Build America initiative, so that way they could really rely less on shipping costs as they kept rising, making it very difficult to be competitive, not just in the US, but in other areas of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point, Kevin. And as you said, it extends even beyond BEAD, but it's important to know how it came about. And yeah, that's really good background. Thank you. Let's next talk about general BABA waivers. So now, while BABA sets strict guidelines, there are some waivers that provide some flexibility. The first is the de minimis waiver. So that allows minor components that account for no more than 5% of the total material cost to be non-compliant with BABA. Additionally, up to 5% of the total applicable project costs capped at 1 million are exempt from BABA requirements. So that's your first waiver. Then there's a small grants waiver, which applies if the combined federal awards for a project are less than $250,000. In such cases, BABA requirements are completely waived. This waiver is based on the simplified acquisition threshold outlined in 2 CFR 200.1. Not that you need to remember that, but that's just to say that those two waivers apply. And then finally, we have minor components, which is U.S. produced iron and steel products may have minor components, again, no more than 5% of the total material costs that are not BABA compliant. So these are the intricacies to the BABA program that can sometimes be hard to track, but the purpose here is that the government recognizes that some of these minor components are difficult to source domestically, and essentially they don't want this to get in the way of projects moving forward. So again, between us, Millennium and Widelity, we can help you guide you through some of these complexities and where waivers may apply to the BABA program. But just know that there are certain situations that would not or that would reduce the BABA burden, if you will.
And there's a little bit of pressure on this side. I know that in some of the research I've done and some things I've read around this, again, kind of looking outside of just our industry, there's different groups are looking into this because there's so much that are coming into the country that kind of fit under this 5% that they're starting to look a little bit deeper at, because you can have significant amount of material that's covered under this 5%. So it's good to work with Widelity and team to just understand what that looks like as we go forward, because there'll be a lot of scrutiny on this part of the waivers I could see going forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so that was general BABA waivers. There are some additional BEAD specific waivers as well. For BEAD projects specifically, these waivers are valid from February 22nd of this year through February 22nd of 2029. So there's several years here where this will apply. Some examples would be non-optic glass inputs used in the preform manufacturing process of optical fiber. Those are waived from BABA compliance. Similarly, non-ferrous metals, plastics, polymer-based production are also exempt from U.S. manufacturing requirements. For certain fiber optic components like connectors and electronics, there are specific conditions. While most electronics are exempt, some items like the optical line terminals and certain network units must still be manufactured in the U.S., although 55% U.S. component requirement is still waived for these items. So that's a lot of information. Again, just want to emphasize that not only are there BABA general waivers, but there are also waivers that apply to BEAD specifically. So it's important to keep those in mind as you kind of navigate your project planning and source your materials and so forth. And that's where Kevin and his team can probably help a lot with determining which components would be BABA exempt or BABA required, and again, we can help guide you through all of the various waivers and special requirements as well.
Yeah, and the manufacturers are doing a great job to be compliant in preparation for all of this activity that's expected. And I think about when it comes to top mind is Adtran has done a great job, has really always been a BABA compliant shop, and they're excited for the future in this space. And so I'm not terribly concerned about there being a lack of materials, because everybody's doing what they need to do to be prepared for this next phase of our broadband industry.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good to hear. And Kevin and I have talked about this quite a bit. And as you said, manufacturers are doing a lot to ensure that they want to make sure that you have the ability to purchase their products at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
All right, next let's talk a little bit about supply chain risk management. The SCRM is another critical aspect of your BEAD application. This plan serves as the mirror to your cybersecurity plan and is aimed at protecting your supply chain from potential threats. Your SCRM plan must be operational or ready to launch if your service is not yet active. It should be based on best practices recommended by NIST and must be regularly updated to reflect any changes in circumstances. Importantly, you must submit this plan to the state before funds are allocated. So that's an important time frame to keep in mind there. And if there are any significant updates, a new version must be submitted within 30 days. So all that's to say is that you must have an SCRM plan in place, even if or rather, it must be available and ready to go, even if your service is not yet active. So I just want to emphasize that part. And the other part really to keep in mind is that you have to submit that plan before the state allocates funds to you. So just keep it more in mind, that important piece of timing there.
Yeah, and this is something that sounds really complicated and may deter you, but all I can stress is that obviously Widelity and Millennium are here to help and pull in the right partners that can help assist with this part of it. And just know that it's not as daunting as it comes across. This is something that really is needed in the industry as we, start to move forward and build networks that need to be, you know, more secure.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, Kevin, I think, this is information heavy here. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind, but that's exactly what we're here to help you with, right?
Yeah.
To remind you of all these important deadlines and to remind you of what pieces need to fall and when. And so it's you can view it as a necessary evil. Right, some other supply chain considerations here. So when it comes to the BEAD program, timing and budgeting are crucial considerations, of course. Speed to deployment will be positively weighted in BEAD program scoring, so it's essential to ensure your supply chain is robust and free from major delays. So in other words, the quicker time to deploy, the better your application will look.
Yeah.
Also,
And I think,
yeah,
oh, go ahead, Joe.
no, go ahead, Kevin.
I was just going to add, I know some of the manufacturers are starting to recommend that if you're considering or planning to go after some bead areas, that you should actually start placing your orders now. And so that's something that, you should have a good partner in place to understand timing of your bead plans and also for budgeting purposes, just to make sure that you've captured the pricing and some of the expectations that you have today.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. The other aspect is budgeting, of course. So it's really important to keep in mind that BEAD is a one and done program, right? So there are it's not going to be like you'll have an opportunity for negotiating additional funds later on. So as a result, it's really wise, I'll say, to lock in your quotes from suppliers before submitting your application in order to have a clear and accurate picture of the costs that are going to be involved. And really, the reason for that is, I mean, taking that approach will help you avoid any surprises down the road. All right, so that is kind of an encapsulation of what BABA looks like and supply chain. So just to kind of tell you a little bit more about where we fit in and Millennium fits in. So in terms of Widelity services, we understand that the bar for BEAD compliance is really high. I mean, that's pretty obvious even just from this little short explanation here. And not just in terms of meeting the minimum requirements, but also in correctly documenting your compliance and optimizing your application for uh, best possible scoring, right? So our team of experts is here to guide you through every step of the process, from onboarding and processing your materials to quality control and submission. We're also here to support you post-award, so after the fact. So that's a really important piece to keep in mind. There's going to be significant reporting and data collection requirements, assuming you do win an award. It doesn't stop there. And it involves multiple years of remaining in compliance, with the strings attached to the money that you're getting. Um, so if you're ready to discuss your BEAD plans and how we can help, we want to hear from you. Kevin, I'll turn it over
Yes.
to you to talk about Millennium.
Yeah, thanks. So obviously the key to the partnership with Widelity is that we'll provide, the different engineering planning to understand what materials will be BABA required and make sure we're putting the right materials in the design. We can obviously help with funding support, working very closely with Widelity. And then, of course, we'll provide the materials that are BABA compliant, and of course, equipment to install it. Quick question, Joe, and not to put you on the spot,
Yeah.
but kind of thinking through, where we're at with BEAD, and then some of the activity around the Affordable Care Act and the Universal Service Fund. What are your thoughts as far as like people thinking about putting in for some of these areas for BEAD, knowing that some of these sources for offsetting what I would consider operational costs? What are your thoughts, and what should people be thinking as we're going forward? And I kind of putting you on a spot there, but it kind of came top of mind as we were kind of getting towards the end of it, that I thought it was something that we should discuss too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, absolutely. I mean, part of when you're scoping your project and in the early project planning phase, you do want to check to see if there are other funding sources available in your project area or other funding, certainly federal funding that's been deployed in your potential project area. Generally speaking, depending on the project, and these are the kinds of things that we can help you work through. But you want to make sure that none of those other funds render that area as ineligible, right? The other thing to keep in mind too is that we've actually had this come up. Can you use money that's been awarded from other programs, right? Uh, to help fund your BEAD projects? And generally speaking, the answer is no. So, we'll help you answer those kinds of questions, and we'll treat everything on a case by case basis. But in general, the NTIA wants to see that you're putting, you have skin in the game, so to speak. Um, so, we can talk about the matching contributions and requirements, but those are the kinds of things that you know, the programs aren't necessarily compatible in those ways. Um, but yeah, I think that's a great question, something to keep in mind. There's a whole host of programs out there, right? But BEAD is the biggest one by far. And so, in a lot of ways, BEAD is taking precedence, and each state is going to map out. BEAD is a little bit unique in the sense that each state is mapping out which eligibles or which areas are eligible within that state. So we'll have a map to guide us as well. So
I heard recently, and again, this is somewhat secondhand information, but a lot of the states are going through their pre-qualification process right now,
right.
and I don't want to call it specific states because I don't know how accurate this information is, but as I understand it, there's a couple states that have either low or very little response to the pre-qualification phase. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I think that creates some challenges on the B program if we have very little activity on it as far as like interested providers that are looking to build some of these areas.
That's a great question, and I think it was Kansas, if memory serves me correctly, where they had a very low response to their pre-qualification round. So the answer is we don't quite know yet what they're going to do, but I mean, I suspect that they'll either run an additional round of pre-qual, that's a possibility, or they may drop the pre-qual entirely. There's a couple of different things that they could potentially do. And Kansas probably isn't going to be the only state where there's a very low response. I just happen to know I'm not sure that they got any responses, quite frankly. So each state will probably handle it differently, but you know, kind of remains to be seen. It's an open question at this point. And I know that some states are, talking about the other programs, right? Some states are trying to clear out money that they've already have. Uh, for example, like Boot in Texas, right? They've got to use up those funds before they can deploy BEAD money. So BEAD is not only are other programs affecting BEAD, but BEAD is also affecting other programs, right? So it's a very interesting dynamic. It's very fluid in some ways. But again, this is exactly why, Kevin and I and the rest of our teams are here to help guide you through this kind of really, dense complexity.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we do very well together as a partnership um and something for people to think about is looking at an area that may or may not make sense for you and your current network deployments that you're doing. So I mean, just something to think about as you determine what areas you want to build. We can truly sit down with you and work through that process to make sure it makes sense for you and your business. Um, because there is a lot going on, and of course, being an election year always complicates programs like this as they
Mhm.
go forward. And it's good to have, you know, Joe, you and your team in the back pocket to like work through some of the challenges that are expected in any type of public government funding program.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Do you want to
Yeah,
talk?
so
Go ahead,
yeah.
Kevin.
So a little bit of a commercial here, but yeah, we're obviously happy to help you with any of your engineering needs. We can certainly help you with partnering with Widelity um, actual match funding, and then obviously provide the materials and equipment to be successful in your build going forward, whether it's BEAD or otherwise.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note that this is part of an ecosystem, right? So we're taking a holistic approach to providing or tackling every aspect of the needs you'll have for fulfilling a BEAD project. And there are many, and that's exactly why we're partnering with Kevin and the team at Millennium because they offer a great for lack of a better term, smorgasbord of different services that can help you with fulfilling that project. And we're a part of that, and we're excited to support you every step of the way. So,
It's pretty exciting where we're at as an industry too, because you think about where we were just a short, really 5 to 10 years ago, as far as network availability. And I currently live in a very rural part of America from my perspective. And I actually have options. Like I have two fiber providers that I can choose from.
hmm,
And, to know that I'm in a relatively rural part of America and I've got options is significantly different than where it was, just a short few years ago, where if I was lucky, I maybe had access to wireless or DSL services.
hmm.
And many of the people, that are involved in this industry are, part of that initiative that made it happen, which is pretty exciting to be part of, a small part of what's going on in our industry today.
Absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned that because I live in the Bay Area in California, and there's tons of it's not urban at all. I'm sorry, not rural at all, but I only have one provider that I can choose from, and so it's kind of the inverse of your situation. And even there's areas like that that are plenty urbanized but are underserved, and that's one aspect of BEAD as well. It's not just unserved, but it's also underserved, and improving competition as well as general access. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it shakes out. It's a very exciting time for sure.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. So if we want to move on to any questions that we have, please add your questions either in the chat or you can use the Q&A feature. We are focusing on BABA and supply chain today, but if you have any general B questions, feel free to throw those out as well. But we're going to get started with some of our registrant questions. The first one is, how does BABA relate to a for-profit company that is receiving funds?
Sure, I can tackle that. So, I guess the short answer is that all recipients of federal funding through the BEAD program must be compliant with BABA. That's the long and short of it. BABA specifically pertains to equipment and material used to construct the broadband network. So, doesn't matter if you're for profit, nonprofit, it's got to be BABA compliant when it comes to BEAD.
Yeah. I mean, really, I don't think it changes much regardless if you're a for-profit or not-for-profit. You really have to comply with the federal regulations, whether it's BEAD or any other type of public funding. It's the expectations are, with a few exceptions, are the same regardless.
Okay, next question. Is fiber placement equipment such as fiber blowers affected by BABA?
Yeah.
Sure. Go
Go
ahead,
ahead,
Ken.
Joe.
I was just going to say, so BABA really only covers components of the build out itself, not really the tools that are used for the deployment. Um, so fiber blowers and things like that don't really need to be domestically manufactured. It's just the build out, right? The actual infrastructure. Is that where you were going, Kevin?
Yeah, it was. I was going to say the equipment to install it, generally speaking, doesn't have the same requirements, but I would fully expect some trickle down coming from this because, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, a lot of the manufacturers that build, either components for the equipment that, you're going to use to build this, we're really asking the feds to step in and make it easier for us as a country to become more build America. And, you think about the like chips program, like just to connect the dots here. So the
Mhm.
electronics manufacturers as well stepped up and said, hey, can you help, move this stuff on shore, as we're seeing complications not only with shipping and logistics, but also security concerns and some of the other challenges that we have around manufacturing being done offshore. So really start thinking about, how it trickles, down into the industry, indirectly. So I would, not that it's a requirement as part of this program, but just expect trickle down for some of the other manufacturers that are building components for this equipment, that it'll start to be more or less built in America if it isn't already.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in just for a second and say that we are seeing across the industry, suppliers are really stepping up to meet these requirements, which is really exciting. So
Yep.
even if this wasn't something that would have been practical, 5 years ago, now we're seeing a lot more availability of these BABA compliant materials.
Yeah, the manufacturers have done a great job of being prepared for this. And I know there was a lot of concerns, probably even just a short 12 months ago, you heard a lot of concerns, but I really do expect that, we're going to see really a lot of availability of BABA compliant materials because of all the hard work that the manufacturers have done to prepare for this and other industries that will be impacted by the Buy America, Build America program.
Okay, next question is, how do foreign businesses and contractors comply with the BABA Act?
There again, BABA requires domestic manufacturing. So the key factor here is that materials, but not services, must be sourced from the US. So that would include things like, the electronics, with, some exceptions like we discussed on the waiver slide there. Um, Businesses can self-certify through the NTIA site, if memory serves me correctly, in order to essentially assure their clients that they're compliant. So, as a business, it would behoove you to do that, because obviously, uh, with all the confusion, you want your clients to have some sort of reassurance that you are providing BABA compliant materials. So, but again, it's just to remember that the materials themselves, not services, are what has to be sourced from the U.S.
Yeah, and foreign companies coming in to do business in this country is not new. It might be relatively new to this industry, having companies coming in from other countries to provide broadband services because of the opportunities that there are in the U.S. compared to the countries that they've been doing business in. But this isn't new to the U.S. We've got a lot of foreign companies that have provided, solutions, equipment, tools, vehicles, what you have it, that have been in this country for a long time, and have, figured out how to do business and be compliant with all the different federal regulations, as well as any type of grant or funding opportunities that they would be eligible for, just like any other American based company.
Okay, we have another question in the chat from Torrance Atkins. Do we have a list of companies already in compliance with BABA? And this is a great question.
Yeah, I guess I'll jump on this one. The short answer is yes. We're working with our manufacturers very closely, and we'll have call it a evolving list of compliant manufacturers that have gone through the steps that Joe mentioned to become compliant through the BABA requirements. So the short answer is yes, and we can provide that for you.
And I would also say that there is supposed to be a public list hosted by NTIA for self-certified suppliers. It's currently blank, so hopefully that gets updated as we get closer.
Yeah, I was gonna say something about that. I was hesitant to say that the NTIA was gonna provide like a list that everybody could work from. I've noticed as of late the NTIA has been slow to update some of their information on their website too. So I guess, for the lack of sound like a commercial, but it's really important to work closely with your vendors. Obviously, we'd be happy from Millennium's perspective, Widelity's perspective, to work very closely with you to get that information, since we are working very closely with our manufacturers and our partners like Widelity to make things happen here. I see Monica posted there that we have our BABA page set up, so there we go. So
Perfect.
thanks, Monica.
So no, I just wanted to obviously give you all our contact information. We would love to have ongoing conversations with you. Hopefully, you found this very useful and informative. But every bead project is going to be unique in some way, and as you saw here, there's a myriad of compliance requirements you kind of have to navigate. And so that's exactly what we're here to help you to do. And Caitlin was kind enough to give us a list here of related resources. These are all going to be really good. And as she mentioned, we will distribute these after the webinar. But general BABA information, and we mentioned that self-certified vendors list, although as Kevin alluded, it's not populated yet. So we would refer you to Millennium's zone list, I think is a good starting point. And then, of course, we have some guidance from NIST on your SCRM and cybersecurity risk management plan. So we would advise you to look at those as well. But again, those are the kinds of things that we can help provide guidance as well. So,
Yeah, and one thing I was going to add is from a NIST perspective, a lot of this isn't new. It was just
yeah,
adopted as part of the BABA program. So,
yeah,
if you have a partner today that you're working with on your SCRM or your cybersecurity solutions, they're already going to be very well aware of NIST because it's a very well known industry. Not just what I meant to say is not just this industry, but other industries compliance expectations. So please don't be, like I said earlier, just don't be fearful. If it sounds complicated, it's not as complicated as it is. It can be daunting. It can be a little bit tedious, but at the end of the day, it's something that a lot of companies are already doing today as part of some of their other requirements, depending on what industry they're in.
yeah, exactly. And I'll echo that. I mean, just from the conversations I've been having with folks, I mean, people are daunted by this, and understandably so, right? It's very complex. There's a whole lot of moving parts. The states, in some states more than others, but the rollout has been clunky. Information kind of comes out at a trickle, then all of a sudden it's like a downpour. So it's a lot, but that's exactly why you want trusted partners to help guide you through that process, right? So just to emphasize again, not to sound too commercially, but that's what we're here to do. This is our wheelhouse. This is where we live in the realm of compliance and application support and all that good stuff. So we're happy to help, and we're happy to have a partner like Millennium who can provide access to a lot of the things that you'll need, a lot of the things that we've talked about here today during the presentation.
Can we get another question in real quick?
Sure.
Absolutely.
So we have a message from Lisa Paulson, who's been having issues getting quotes for BABA parts. Some companies have been stating that they will not have those details until next year, which,
Hmm.
as you can tell, is going to be a big problem because applications need to go in this year. So in that context, how can they deal with the supply chain part when you can't really plan for what will be needed and when?
Yeah, and I know that it continues to be, and it's really, I would say it depending on the manufacturer or vendor, they're just going through the same type of challenges that you would expect on the provider side to be compliant. They're going through the same side to be BABA compliant from a Build America perspective to make sure that they have everything in place. So um generally speaking, not to oversimplify this or make it sound like it's going to not be a challenge, as we all know, any type of federally funded program comes with its challenges. Um, just know that most of the manufacturers that I've talked to or been involved with conversations, they're working diligently to become, BABA compliant, which in some cases is retooling the way they do business today. So think about materials that are, simply stated they're manufactured in another country, and they're basically bringing all that material, to fit that 55%, right? So they have to bring that back and assemble it here in the US. And so the reason there's delays in that is because they physically have to change how they're doing business today to be compliant. And so the challenge for Millennium is to do a good job in trying to find the right solutions that will be in place and try to understand what the pricing is. And we're, as Lisa knows, we're working diligently with our manufacturers to try and get that information as quickly as possible. And in some cases, we're at the mercy of their own challenges to get compliant in time. But we are working closely with them to get that.
Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity to reach out to Kevin and his team to, to get some guidance on, those materials that you're having trouble sourcing and having trouble with those vendors as far as what's BABA compliant, what's not. That's what Kevin and his team can help guide you through locating and sourcing those materials. And then on our side, obviously helping you navigate the process itself. So we're excited to present here to you today. Again, thank you, Kevin, for jumping on with us and all the insight that you provided. And hopefully, like I said, you got something, at least one little tidbit here or there out of this that'll help you with the process, because it's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
For sure. I mean, and let's face it. I mean, government funding in this industry is very much not new, right? It's
Mhm.
been part of the industry for as long as I've been in it, and I'm afraid to say it out loud, but it's 30 plus years. Public funding of some sorts has always been in it, and with funding comes requirements, comes some type of compliance, and it's very much been part of this industry. And so it's, yes, this is a new program. It's a big one. It's got a big dollar behind it, but there's others out there too. Like I think about, we've got a bunch of providers that are working with enhanced ACAM right now. That comes with its own set of requirements. There's still all of the, reconnect,
Mhm.
ARPA, the ARPA money's still out there. You've got RDOF there's still RDOF products that are being done. So there's
Yeah.
a lot going on. But just know that those programs all started with their own challenges, complications, and along with that came with, companies struggling to really, be compliant, and not having the right partners in place. And so I think it's important to understand that this is not really new to our industry. Obviously, this has some new twists and turns to it that we are not accustomed to in this specific industry, but not really new to the US in general and some of the other funding programs and grants that are out there. So whether it's BEAD or some of the other ones, just know that you've got partners out there, whether it's, Widelity or Millennium, there's other partners out there that can help you out, and don't be afraid to ask for help and get the help you need to be successful, because, the last thing you want is to be caught up in some type of um, an area where you're being built up around, or um, not sure whether you should go after it and it gets unserved, because that would be the two worst scenarios I can see in today's current state, is that you're, not serving a particular area where it does need access to broadband, not only to create opportunities for you and your company, but for the people you're going to serve to have access to technology and solutions that will help them long term, that will be brought with the broadband connections.
That's an excellent point. Great way to sum it up. And I think that this is all about equality of access, getting everyone access, the entire country, right? Areas that have for long been unserved or underserved, and this is about rectifying that. And it's been a long effort, and this is the biggest push here yet that we've seen in the industry. And um, you know, like Kevin alluded, you don't want to get into a position where you're being built around or overbuilt or getting left behind, quite frankly, because that's kind of the end result of this is, you know, um, granted, it's I don't know that this will achieve 100% connectivity, even though that's the stated goal, but it'll be a lot better than it is today. So don't sit on your hands and don't wait around, because it's happening. Um, but yeah, so we're here to help. We're here to allay your fears and get you over the finish line.
Yep. Thanks again, Joe and team. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you everyone for attending. It was really great to have you all today. Thanks for taking some time out of your day. As Caitlin mentioned earlier, we'll distribute a recording of this webinar along with some of these resources that you see on the screen. And just to finally mention, don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions or if you need help getting your BEAD project up and going.